name's Matthew. I'm a PhD student here at Cambridge. Today I'll be interviewing Jon Thompson, who's a PhD student in philosophy at King's College London. He's also a tutor at Christian Heritage Round Church, and he's been on the organizing committee for the Forming a Christian Mind Conference for the last few years. And today I'm going to ask Jon a few questions about faith and academia, what the life of a faithful Christian academic looks like, how he's done some cool work at the intersection of faith and academia, and also we'll talk a little bit about the Forming a Christian Mind Conference at the end. So welcome, Jon.
Thank you.
Being here. So what do you see to be kind of what the life of a faithful Christian academic may look like? How can we be a follower of Jesus in academy? Maybe speaking to your discipline of philosophy in particular, as an example.
I think broadly, character is obviously hugely important with regard to the Christian life within the academy. And what I mean by that is I think in relation to this question of Jesus' admonition, seek ye first the kingdom of God, his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. In that context, he's of course talking about your daily needs. But I think a similar principle applies to our Christian life in academia. Namely, there is a tendency within the academy to become obsessive with career advancement, peer review, how many citations you're getting on papers, all these kinds of things. And those are very important things as an academic. But I think it's important as well to not try to build your identity or to build the kingdom around those things, but to seek the kingdom first, to have integrity in terms of what you're hoping to achieve with your lifetime of work, and praying that God will bless that through providing these other avenues, the means to make that a reality. So I think that's very important. The other thing is being a follower of Jesus. Some great advice I had once was be tenacious with your superiors and be extra gracious with those who are below you on the academic rung, as it were, on the academic ladder. So be very encouraging of those who are undergraduates or just starting their graduate work, but challenge those within the academy who have an established position, because that's ultimately going to help them pursue truth as well. So those are a couple practical things, I guess.
Okay. So just really quickly, this is a big question, but briefly, how do you see faith and academia intersecting?
I think it's in many ways a two-way channel. So there are lots of interesting ways in which we can think about faith's contribution to academia, and lots of ways we can think about the academy's contribution to the life of our faith. So I guess to take the first of those, faith's contribution, I think Christianity, Christian faith, gives us a whole set of questions that maybe our peers in the academy, whether it's philosophy or another discipline, aren't asking. So lots of ultimate questions are, of course, perennial questions within the Christian tradition. What is it to be a human being? Questions of philosophical and theological anthropology. I think those are pressing questions for Christians, and especially for Christians in the academy. And they, of course, Christians have distinctive answers to those that they can bring to the discussion philosophically. And what does our faith, what does our academic work contribute to our faith? Well, sometimes it helps us revise or clarify certain concepts in our confession, in our theology. So questions about how to reconcile the oneness and threeness of the divine being, of course. Questions like this, I think philosophy and clear academic philosophy can help us to think about these questions.
So one of my favorite stories is how about 40 years ago, three of the top analytic philosophers of religion, so there was Plantinga, who you talked about before, and Nicholas Walterstorff and Bill Alston, all got together at Calvin College, and they said, what are the real obstacles to the gospel that we can identify in our discipline of philosophy, and come up with the logical form of the argument from evil, and also kind of questions within religious epistemology. How can we be justified in beliefs of God? Philosophically, how can we make sense of God speaking to us? And so now, 40 years later, it seems like they've done a pretty solid job of addressing those questions, and we're kind of moving on to the next generation of young philosophers of religion, like yourself. So what do you identify now? Maybe if you had your own summit here at the Round Church, the top philosophers of religion, the next generation, what do you think would be kind of the real obstacles to the gospel within philosophy?
Yeah, great question. I think that's something I'm trying to come to terms with myself and establishing a career trajectory and research trajectory. So, I mean, the short answer is I don't know, you know, exactly what those areas would be. Some kind of intuitions or gut feelings I have are questions about human nature, so and sociological questions, which is more your field. Questions because those questions connect with issues like gender and all kinds of other questions that our society is placing a lot of stock in right now. So I think philosophers dealing with those issues is extremely important in this next generation. But
And then on the flip side, what do you see as the real opportunities for the gospel or for conversations about Jesus for philosophers?
yeah, great question. Again, I think within philosophy, what's wonderful about it in many ways is that you can argue for any position, of course. There have been philosophers who've argued for almost every position about reality, about what it is to be a human being, all these questions. And so, you know, you can always get a place at this table and argue a certain position as long as you, you know, adhere to the standards of rigor and clarity that are required. So, of course, I have colleagues who are idealists, who don't believe there's a material world, right? So, the good thing is there's a plurality of views within philosophy, and those are always maintained. So when I give a paper on the resurrection or what have you, people are willing to listen as long as I put forward the correct kind of standards of argumentation. So I think in philosophy we have it easy in a sense because the sociological structure, you could say, of the discipline is such that the widest diversity of views is encouraged as long as you support it with argumentation. I think other fields actually don't have as much of an openness to all kinds of different views. So that might be an area where philosophy actually has great opportunities where other fields don't.
So how have you tried to bring together faith in your academic work, and speaking in particular to maybe this more recent group, the Invisible College you've started, which is a group for Christian philosophers?
Yeah, so I think that group partially was started because of a personal need, honestly. I mean, I was doing work in a philosophy faculty at an institution where there weren't many Christians or believers in God, and so I had a certain set of questions that I found interesting and wanted a place to engage with others who might share some of the starting points that I did. But also I wanted challenging from those people who had a sense of the Christian tradition, of theological questions as well as philosophical ones, and a supportive environment to do good philosophy, but to do it from a Christian starting point in many ways. And so basically the Invisible College was just this group, fairly informal group that we started with mostly philosophers from Cambridge, but we've had people come up from London and over from Oxford who really want this kind of academic community where we present papers to one another, and then we carry on like a philosophical seminar like any other place with deep and probing questions, but always in a collegial atmosphere where we're supporting one another and praying for one another along the way. So I think it's a need in many other disciplines as well, I suspect, where postgraduate work can often be isolating.
So we're really excited about the Forming a Christian Mind conference this year. It's going to be happening on Saturday, November 19th. It's basically all day, and the keynote speaker is going to be Professor John Lennox, who's a professor and fellow in maths and philosophy of science at Oxford. And he's also one of the leading Christian apologists and researchers working at the intersection of questions of science and faith. We also have a number of speakers from other disciplines represented as well. So we hope you'll consider registering and coming along to that. Last year we had around 150 people, and there should be registration information at the end of this video. But John, since you've been on the organizing community for the past few years now, what has Forming a Christian Mind meant for you in the past? What can we expect? If somebody said they were considering coming, wanted to know what it was about, what would you tell that person?
Yeah, I think there are probably two things primarily I would focus on. One is the content that you will receive at this conference will be very good, So John Lennox, of course, he's a mathematician and apologist. You might think, well, I'm a physicist or I'm a sociologist, but actually what he's going to focus on is principles that are fairly universal on this topic of the relationship between faith and the academy. He's going to talk about these general questions we've been talking about here, how to interact with the academy and how to bring your faith into that conversation. So that's the first thing, is the content I think will be excellent. And the second thing is relationships have meant a lot to me that have been formed out of this conference over the past several years. So you might meet someone from your discipline who's working on similar questions, who is also a Christian, who you didn't know was in your faculty, perhaps. And so these kinds of conversations and relationships are really fruitful in the long run.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, John,
Yeah,
and for
thank you.
laying some wisdom upon us. We hope you can all join us for the Forming Christian Mind Conference in a few weeks. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Awesome.